They're just absolutely fixated on how much they're paying on their monthly phone bill. And I try to tell them politely sometimes that if TELUS paid you $1,000 a month to use that phone, you're still going out of business.
I can see the whole wide world with these two eyes, and I can be whoever I wanna be, 'cause it's my life.
Hi, thanks for joining us for another episode of Ask Spurrell CPA. Today we're talking about how expense minimization is not the answer. I have Trevor from Inspired Method here with me, and he knows a thing or two about generating revenue for small businesses.
Yeah, that is the number one way that we help businesses to succeed is with that top line revenue. So it's our pleasure and our joy to do that for business owners, and let's get into it.
Right on. So the quote that we have here today, it's a Peter Drucker quote. He's written 39 books, and he says very simply, nothing happens until someone sells something. Nothing happens till someone sells something. And the statistic that we're always, fighting against is 50% of all Canadian small businesses go out of business in 5 years. And the number one reason that these business owners will cite for going out of business, the most common reason, 42% of the time, they will say that they were not able to attract enough customers or business. And so the story that we have here, business owners, they're struggling financially. And they're absolutely fixated on minimizing expenses, even though minimizing the expenses will probably not fix the underlying business problem. So, Trevor, what are the questions that these business owners need to be asking?
Well, I think the first question is, can most employees significantly alter their income?
And there it is. It's that employee mindset where, when you're working for someone else, generally you really can't change how much you're making. You're making a set salary, a set hourly rate. There might be a little bit of opportunity to work some overtime or earn some commissions, but for the most part, you're going to be within a very narrow range. No matter what you do as an employee, you're going to be making a set amount.
So if you can't change your income, what do you do to increase wealth?
So that's what you do if you're an employee and you want to build wealth, is you reduce expenses. That income number is going to be the same. So if you want to increase wealth, you got to reduce those expenses. And then the difference between the income and the expenses, now that's money that's available to be saved and invest and generate some passive income from. That's the strategy as an employee.
Okay, so now why should you shift this mindset when you start a business?
So, what has to happen is you have to realize as soon as you start a business, now you go from little or no opportunity to increase your income to absolute infinite opportunity to increase your income. And that'll be the number one predicator for success is if you're able to increase that income. So you have to switch that mindset. You spent years and years thinking, and everyone it's about minimizing expenses to increase wealth. So all of a sudden that now you're a business owner, you're one of 5% of the population, unlike the other 95% who has to reduce expenditures to increase wealth. You actually have to increase revenue. And if that means spending some money to make some money or buy some time back, that can be something that you should be doing.
Gotcha. So what expense categories do business owners often become fixated on?
Oh man, they become fixated on the least important ones. They become fixated on, how much their phone bill is. What's the utilities bill? What is the interest and bank charges of the business? They become fixated on these small line items, that really don't make a whole ounce of anything.
Okay, so will businesses often fail even when these types of expenses are minimized?
Yeah, sometimes I'm telling people, we have a meeting booked and the business is in significant trouble. There's a chance that they're going to run out of cash shortly. And they're just absolutely fixated on, how much they're paying on their monthly phone bill. And I try to tell them politely sometimes that if TELUS paid you $1,000 a month to use that phone, you're still going out of business. It has nothing to do with the success of the company. So not only if it was free, if they were paying you to use the phone, it's still not going to make anything. They become absolutely fixated on these types of smaller expenses.
Okay, so Why do you organize income statements in numerically descending order?
So I'll organize income statements in numerically descending order. Some accountants will organize them in alphabetical order. I'll purposely sort them in numerical descending order. So you have your revenue, you have your cost of sales, you have your gross margin, and then all the general expenses I'm going to organize in numerically descending order. Because as a business owner, you almost want to draw a line halfway through that and start looking at, you want to spend all of your time on the things above that line. Starting with revenue, working into your gross margin, and then the most expensive administrative expenses, the most expensive overhead expenses. You want to spend the least amount of time at the things at the bottom because they're making the least amount of impact on your bottom line net profit.
Right.
So that's why I'll always organize an income statement in numerically ascending order, so business owners spend the most amount of time at the items at the top of that list.
That makes a lot of sense. So now, is it generally important to spend time optimizing your gross margin?
Yeah, gross margin is one of the things that it has a good rate of return. If you're a contractor and you could increase the profitability of your jobs from 25% to 33%, that's huge. That's way more significant than your interest in bank charges or your phone bill. That gross margin, so the direct cost of labor, the direct cost of subcontractors, the direct cost of materials. If you're a physician, it's those direct costs of those associated doctors. And what do you make after the revenue? What do you pay after those direct costs? What you're going to make on that gross margin? Those are normally big numbers and at the absolute crux of your business. So if you're spending time to optimize those expenses, they generally have a good payback for the time that you're going to invest in them.
Okay. So now, is it generally important to spend time optimizing your admin labor?
Admin labor will be usually in most businesses one of the few overhead expenses that actually amounts to anything. And in fact, usually we start looking at the overhead or admin labor, and it's probably as much as in a lot of businesses, as much as all of the other overhead expenses combined, with the exception of probably rent is another significant one. But usually rent you're locked into without breaking your lease. You're
Right.
probably not getting out of that one anytime soon. So your overhead labor is something that makes a big difference, and you can usually, it's something you can adjust. You can redirect people to, billable tasks, or you can adjust your staffing levels if need be. And those expenses will dwarf almost all of the other expenses, combined.
Right. So now, are the remaining expenses generally responsible for business failure?
They're usually not. They can be a reason of why a successful business is a little bit more successful, but they're usually not the reason why you're either going to succeed or fail. When we're talking about what you're paying in office stationery and what you're paying the accountant and what you're paying in interest in bank charges and what you're paying utilities, that's not going to be the reason why you're going to succeed or fail 9 times out of 10.
Right.
9 times out of 10, you're going to succeed or fail because of the revenue, because of your gross margins, because of what you're paying, your overhead expenses, because of what your rent is, and the other expenses. Although they help, they generally make a successful company more successful if you optimize them. They won't make a failing company succeed.
Right. So where should you be spending most of your time as a business owner?
So, we talked about the gross margin and the overhead expenses, but even more time than that is, what are those revenue generating activities? What can we do to generate more revenue, and what can we do that we make sure that we can produce more? So, not just generating new business, but getting through the existing business. How do we increase the productivity if we already have the business in the pipeline? We can get more out the door and get it done at a better margin. That's generally where you need to spend your time as a business owner, is in that top line.
So advertising and marketing are very important KPIs that you should be taking a look at on a regular basis.
Yeah. How many leads are in the system? How many estimates are in the system? We went back and we did a whole video series, recently on what your ad spend should be. What sort of impressions you should be getting, what sort of clicks you should be getting. Those are all KPIs that are numbers that you should be tracking that are likely more pertinent than what your phone bill and what your interest and bank charges are.
Yes. So now, what is your most important resource as a business owner?
So your most important resource as a business owner, normally people are going to think it's cash. They're going to think it's cash most of the time. And although cash is important, probably the second most important, the most important is time. We all only have 168 hours in the week. The most successful people, the richest people and the poorest people, 168 hours a week, and how we can use that 160 hours a week is probably going to be the biggest determinant on if we are going to be successful and not in business. So we don't have time to do everything perfectly. So we're looking at that income statement, top to bottom, most significant first, least significant first. We have to be allocating those 168 hours in our business life and personal life on the most important things first.
That makes sense. So if you have some cash and can spend money to save time, should you?
Yes, and this it goes against that that employee mindset where it's about minimizing expenses. But if you can buy back 5 hours or 10 hours or 20 hours a week, and that costs you $50 an hour to buy that back, but you can make $100 an hour and generating more revenue, you should be buying that time back all day long. A lot of times in business, it's about trading money for more time. As long as you can trade it for more time at a rate that's lower than what you can make yourself, that's important, right? Yeah. And we also have to think about the things that we do as business owners. Sometimes there's people who can do them quicker than we can do them.
Right.
So even if we can do them, what might be 8 hours of a business owner's time to someone who specializes in that area, that might only be an hour or 2 hour project for them. So a lot of times if you can trade money for more time, that's the way as a business owner. That's going to help you, spend more time on generating more revenue as opposed to the expenses that may be a little bit easier. Sometimes people focus on those interest charges, those phone bills, because they're really easy to conceptualize. I call TELUS, I get a $5 a month discount.
Yeah.
It's good, it's simple. But the things that are going to make you win are probably the harder items. Generating that additional revenue, freeing up your schedule that you can actually generate that additional revenue.
Yeah, and I would put this out there. Maybe you can confirm this, that if you are majoring on the minors, which means if you're looking at your phone bill and the small expenses, if you're at the position where those things are a big concern of yours, you're probably in a bad situation already.
Yes.
Yeah. So just putting that out there, and coming in and talking with Josh at Spurrell and Associates CPA, he is going to be able to dissect and take a look at your business and really help you to focus on what is important for the top line revenue, those top line items that are super important. So I'd encourage you to come in and schedule that appointment, get your free book, go online to spurrell.ca, and if you like what you hear here today, then please give us a thumbs up, like the channel, and give us some comments down below and just tell us how we're doing. We'll give you some amazing content going forward, and stay tuned for the next episode of Ask Spurrell CPA.
Thanks very much, guys.